Good afternoon. I got here early to turn in my slip and discovered that you must be taking them in reverse order because here I am batting cleanup. I'll take advantage of that opportunity to react to some of the comments that were made earlier before getting to my own testimony. One of the testifiers suggested that you separate out the residency requirement from the living wage ordinance portion of this piece of legislation, and I would like to attach myself to that comment that I think they should be separated, even though I disagree with pretty much everything else the guy said. You had a number of people here from religious backgrounds who are quoting the Bible and suggesting that there should be some religious motivation for voting against Senate Bill 626. I am a staunch atheist. I'm one of the founders of Atheists and Agnostics of Wisconsin and the current coordinator. And I wish to attach myself to those religious folks. We are eye to eye, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder on this. This is a terrible piece of legislation. Also, as a member of the Madison Area Coalition of Reason, I would like to speak strongly in favor of evidence-based decision-making, and one of the best things you can take away from this hearing today is all of the research that Peter Rickman provided you. Read that stuff. It's facts. It's facts. It shows you what living wages actually do for a community, what they actually do for an economy. I'm sure you'll be able to find people akin to the lobbyists for the tobacco industry and the oil industry who will say, well, we have our own research that shows there is no such thing as a link between cancer and smoking. There is no such thing as climate change. Yes, there are people like that who are in the pockets of their corporate paymasters who will come up with studies to that effect. Look at the neutral studies that were performed by the academics, the people who have no vested interest. They all agree that living wage ordinances work. They add to the economy, they decrease crime rates because people are no longer so desperate for money that they go out and have to steal for it. These are all facts that should be used as the basis for decision making. One of the reverends here quoted the great Republican Abraham Lincoln. I have a quotation of his which I have almost committed to memory. I would like to share with you. The legitimate object of government is to do for people whatever they cannot do at all or cannot so well do for themselves in their separate and individual capacities. And that's what these local ordinances in Madison and Milwaukee are designed to do. They're designed to help the poorest among us. And that gets me to the comment from Senator Grothman. Do you think money grows on trees? Nobody thinks money grows on trees, which gets me to the actual testimony that came here to give, which is based on this yellow map, which you should all have received a copy of. Where does money come from? It comes from the people who make stuff. The second line on this is annual GDP, that's gross domestic product, represents the market value of all goods and services produced within the country or state in a year. Who produces the goods? Workers. Who provides the services? Workers. Who makes the wealth in this country? Workers. People like the folks you've heard testifying here today that put in 40 hours a week, making stuff, providing services, doing things. That's what makes the economy. And you would think that those are the people who would come in for some of this wealth. And when I say wealth, we're like fish swimming in the sea. We don't notice the water. We are the wealthiest nation in the history of history. We have more money in this country than we know what to do with. We are awash in money. This map shows the wealth of individual states compared to the wealth of individual nations around the world. There's a fight going on in Ukraine for the control of the Ukrainian resources. People may be going to war over the economic resources of Ukraine. They have the approximate gross domestic product of the state of Idaho. The 13th or 14th, depending on whether you count Israel, nuclear power in the world may be Iran. They are trying to pay for that with money from the equivalent of the economy of Alabama. Alabama's unofficial state motto is, at least we're not Mississippi. Mississippi has the economy of Chile, one of the most vibrant and productive nations in South America with their vast natural resources, including copper, the world's largest copper reserves. Mississippi is the equivalent of an entire nation in South America. We have money in this country. Why is it not going to the people who created that wealth? Well, I will draw you a cartoon. Who would object to those people getting that money? Let's imagine a guy on a 25th floor of a skyscraper in Milwaukee. He makes money by gambling with other people's money, taking a little bit off the wins, taking a little bit off the losses. It doesn't really matter that much to him whether he wins or loses because he gets his either way. And he made $1 million in salary and commissions last year, and he's ticked because he only made $200,000 in bonuses. He thinks he should have got $250,000, and he figures he could probably squeeze it out of his receptionist and the woman who comes in every midnight to clean his office, except that Rapid City of Milwaukee won't let him cut their wages. That's the sort of guy who would be opposed to legislation like this. Now, I said that was a cartoon, and it is. It's a caricature. But there's one part about that which is a reality, which is that guy can afford a lobbyist. The poor cleaning woman can't. And if this legislature is for sale to people like that, we're going to end up with terrible pieces of legislation like Senate Bill 626. So, just a few comments about Representative Kapinga. He said in response to a question from Senator Risser that Senator Risser pointed out that places like South Florida, which is awash in refugees from Castro's Cuba, have enacted minimum wage ordinances. And those folks are hardly, it's not hardly a commie plot when all those folks think that we need a minimum wage. And Representative Kapinga said, well, you have to pay attention to local conditions. His words. Well, it seems to me that's what the folks in Milwaukee are doing. They are paying attention to local conditions. However, earlier in his testimony, he said we need a statewide uniform policy on these things, which of course is directly contrary to paying attention to local conditions. So if Representative Kapinga can ever figure out what he really stands for, I submit that it is entirely possible to come up with public policy that will do both, will recognize the terrible working conditions that some people in Milwaukee have and spread a decent living wage to the entire rest of the state. So in conclusion, because I can tell you would like me to conclude, I think that this piece of legislation is one of the pettiest, cheapest, cruelest, most venal, cold-hearted, and mean-spirited piece of legislation that was ever confronted before the Wisconsin State Legislature. The people who introduced it should be ashamed of themselves. I hope you all consign it to the deepest hole of hell, where it will only see the light of day if we ever decide that we don't really want to be a society that gives a damn about its individual citizens. I thank you for your attention, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you want at great length.
Any questions? Thanks for coming over from Kendall Street.